Welcome to Rent or Die, the podcast where we break down the truth about real estate, property management, and building wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor, an apartment building owner, or maybe you're thinking about getting into rental real estate, we've got the insights to help you win in the rental game. Thanks for tuning in. Let's jump into today's episode. All right, let's get started here. So, today, the University of Notre Dame plays against Navy. We're super excited about that. Uh, Love the Notre Dame. Hope they stop Navy today. Would be really glad to hear that. Today is November 8th, 2025. Thanks for listening. And I wanted to talk today a little bit about cap rates, capitalization rates, why they matter. They matter very much, and they are an indicator for commercial real estate, or I would argue, even if you're buying residential income property, you certainly want to figure out what the cap rate is. But our discussion right now kind of is aligned with commercial property, 5 units, 6 units, and above, all the way to 100 units, 200 units, whatever the case may be. And it would also be for apartments, office buildings, retail. I guess cap rate has a universality to it, right? So, what is the cap rate? The cap rate is if you were to pay cash for the building, that would be the rate of return on your investment. So assuming you have no debt, that's what you're going to yield. So if you spent $1 million for a property and it generated $60,000, then your cap rate would be a 6% cap rate. So pretty straightforward, right? Now let's say you just want to learn the cap rate. You could always just simply look at the net operating income and divide that by the purchase price. So in this case, you would go $60,000 divided by $1 million, and that's going to equal 0.06, and that's a 6% cap rate. So it's one of the major indicators that can be used to assess what a building's worth pound for pound. And what that means is when you look on real estate websites and you're out there shopping, or maybe you're preparing a building to be sold, and you're trying to estimate how much you're trying to get out of it. And then if you're buying, you're trying to estimate kind of what things are going for. And that's a good indicator. So you can, quickly, latch onto a cap rate and say, okay, it looks like everything's going for a 6 cap. And then get out there and see what that looks like. And then when you return and you do some more online shopping, you kind of know what's what in terms of being able to gauge comparatively the value and things like that. So when I say that comparatively, because if you found a 6 cap that was, let's say a turn of the, a 1904 building, right? It was built in 1904, and you found a building, a 6% cap rate that was built in 2004, you might inquire and say, well, comparatively, the newer building seems to have more value. And that would be really, really, really just a cursory way to think about it, because obviously with commercial real estate, there's a lot of complexities involved there. So, with the cap rate as an indicator, I'll give you an example. I was trying to think of an example. So, let's just say, for example, you had a small retail strip center, okay, and it had 5 units. Each unit was 1,000 square feet. All right. So every unit is paying $1,000 a month rent. So $1,000 a month times 5 spaces is $5,000 per year, times 12 months is $60,000 per year. And so if we've had a purchase price on that of $1 million, there's your 6 cap. Okay. Now, follow along with me here. Now, let's say, and so you would actually, I'm going to bring up another indicator, a price per square foot. So in that case, your price per square foot would be $200 per square foot. 5,000 times $200 is $1 million. So, and you have your six cap. Okay. Now let's look down the block. Let's assume the same neighborhood. And now you have a retail strip center that is, let's say, has 10 units in it, and it's actually 10,000 square feet, and they're getting for their units over there uh, $500 a month. Okay. So if you take 10 times 500, you have $5,000. Now, whenever you times that by 12, you have $60,000. And if you divide that by a million, you have your 6% cap rate. Okay. So, so two units over there are going to be $1,000, right? If you had two units, it'd be $1,000, like trying to match it back to our original example. And so when you think about that, though, if that building is 10,000 square feet, well, it's going to be basically half the price per square foot. It's going to be $100 a square foot instead of $200 a square foot, even though it's earning the same income, right? So, so with that said, the price per square foot, being that it's so much less as an indicator, is super important, because why would somebody buy it? And then you're going to look at those two buildings and try to figure out why. Now, if all things are equal and you're looking at the building, they're relatively in the same location, they are relatively the same age, they have relatively the same parking. There's no rate limiting steps or high water marks in the deal, or what I like to call in commercial real estate, like unpleasant factors. Like it's not a pleasure to park and things like that. Um, so you're kind of you're going to go with the second property, right? The larger building for $100 a square foot. But now if you were shopping online and they weren't displaying the square footage, I know they do, but and you're just simply cap rate driven, you might be missing out on a major opportunity to re-tenant the spaces or add value in terms of um, you know re-tenanting, uh, that type of thing, or just through leasing, sometimes, because I did say all things were equal. And sometimes, even if that second property isn't equal, that's okay too, because you can kind of look at it and say, all right, well, if property one sells and they create that comp of $200 a square foot, I mean, and you're at $100 a square foot, I mean, that tells you that you've got some real good opportunity to go in there and maybe put a new facade on the property, maybe re-tenant and update the utilities and things like that. So it becomes a different equation. So capitalization rate, though, is one indicator that's used in commercial real estate. Another one is that price per square foot basis. Now, with apartments, I've heard, you have a lot of things. So let's say, you find a good cap rate building, but the price per square foot is 3x of what other buildings are going for. You might really ask yourself why that is, and if it's justified. And if it's not justified, then you pass on the deal. So it's important to know that these indicators exist. Another one in apartments is price per door. You hear that a lot. Well, this thing's going for 320,000 per door. That seems too high, or and then maybe it's a situation where it's brand new construction, and it's actually still below its replacement cost. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, but price per door isn't a good indicator. Um, Price per square foot, capitalization rate. You also have gross rent multipliers and things like that. Another one I like, or another consideration for purchase, though, or selling, and determining where you sit with your value. If you have a vacant property, and so let me bold that there. If you have a vacant property, you would look at what does it cost me to own this thing. And so if it's vacant, you're looking at what's the tax rate as a vacant property, what's the maintenance on this property, what's the tax on this property, what's it going to cost me to own. So if you were comparing vacant properties to vacant properties, that's a good way to look at it too. In addition to your price per square foot. So, but you kind of, so you want to, and maybe if you're looking at two buildings that the price per square foot was $200 a square foot, but one of them costs twice as much to own. If you're selling your property, you might want to consider that, like, hey, my vacant property is going to cost them twice as much to own. Maybe I want to be a little bit more aggressive on my pricing. Using the price per square foot basis. So that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Go Notre Dame, go Irish, and kickoffs here shortly. And again, I hope that Notre Dame is victorious in their game. And even if they're not, I do know that Notre Dame will win overall. So thanks a lot for listening. And if you have an opportunity to like or subscribe on the YouTube page, or anywhere you see a subscribe like button, it's super appreciated. So thank you very much. All right, that's it for this episode of Rent or Die. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear this. Got a wild landlord or tenant story? Hit me up. I'd love to feature it on the show. You can email it to vetshopcustomercare@gmail.com. Again, that's vetshopcustomercare@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.